Chapter 25. I sailed through the air and struck the closest Hork-Bajir in the chest. Down he went, with me on top of him. He rolled over and tried to get up. He was fast. I was faster. He struck at me with his razored arm. I ducked under the blow. My left paw swung, so fast even I couldn't see it. It left 4 oozing tracks across the Hork-Bajir's shoulder. Another Hork-Bajir. Wrist blades, elbow blades, and talons whizzed. They were like a pair of lawnmowers on full throttle. And still, I was faster. I can't even remember what happened next. All I have is this image of the tiger, of me, with claws slashing and jaws snapping. I was a whirlwind of orange fur and black stripes. The Hork-Bajir fell back. I roared. They turned and ran. On one side, I saw Rachel. She lifted a Hork-Bajir up on her tusks and tossed him back over her shoulder like he was a doll. And then I saw Marco. Big Jim's massive body was ripping its way out of Marco's slight frame.
"Just call me King," Marco said. "King Kong."
The truth is, like Cassie said, gorillas are very gentle, peaceful, quiet creatures. The truth also is that they are strong. Really strong. Basically, compared to a gorilla, a man is something made out of toothpicks. Now, Hork-Bajir are pretty large creatures. They stand about 7 feet high and are built for trouble. But Marco swung one big gorilla fist and hit the nearest Hork-Bajir in the stomach. The Hork-Bajir went down. Hard. I roared. Rachel trumpeted. Marco lifted the Hork-Bajir up and tossed him aside like a rag doll. The rest of the Hork-Bajir turned and ran.
"Now!" I shouted. "Before they get organized again!"
We charged. Rachel just plowed right through some of the small sheds and buildings like Godzilla heading for Tokyo. Marco came loping along, swinging his massive forearms, punching anything that got in his way. Whatever he punched stayed down. And I ran right down the middle, looking for any controller dumb enough to mess with me. We reached the cages. The people in Hork-Bajir inside shrank back from us. They were almost as afraid of us as they were of the controllers. Let's face it, a rescue party made up of an elephant, a gorilla, and a tiger is not what they'd been hoping for. Marco began ripping at a lock on one of the cages. The lock gave way. The door flew open. Marco did something very human to reassure them. He made a little bow, then crooked his finger at them as if to say, "Come on out." Tom was the first out. He looked scared and mad and determined. I was going to send him a thought message, telling him who I was, but suddenly, there was Rachel, screaming in my head.
"Jake!" Rachel said. "Look, Cassie!"
Cassie was nearly at the end of the infestation pier. The Hork-Bajir and Taxan guards were still sticking to their duties. As I watched, another human was shoved headfirst into the yerk pool.
"Cassie's next!"
I cried.
"Don't worry,"
Marco said.
"We'll take care of Tom. Go before they do it to her."
I hesitated for only a second, as 1,000 thoughts went through my head. Later I would think about that moment. Think maybe, if only. I broke into a run. I had to get to her. As I watched, the 2 Hork-Bajir on the pier grabbed Cassie by the arms. "No!" she cried. I tore at full speed. I leaped over Taxans. I dodged around Hork-Bajir. I practically flew. But I couldn't really fly. Not the way Tobias could. I saw him high up in the cavern. Down he came, like a bullet. The talons came forward. Tobias hit the first Hork-Bajir at about 50 miles an hour. He swooped away, leaving the alien clutching at the slimy mess where his eyes used to be. That was all Cassie needed. She broke away and ran back down the pier. I finally got there and went after the remaining Hork-Bajir controller.
"Morph!"
I yelled to Cassie.
"Morph and head back for the stairs!"
She looked at the other humans and Hork-Bajir behind her in the line.
"Run! All of you, run!"
They did. Cassie plowed into the panicky crowd. Moments later, a black-maned head appeared above the shoulders of the crowd. Cassie had become a horse and was racing for the stairs. I started after her, racing back around the pool toward Marco, Rachel, Tom, and the crowd of hosts they'd freed from the cages. The controllers were starting to get organized. A group of Taxans were slithering out to stop Cassie and me. Both the Hork-Bajir and the Taxans were carrying weapons now.
"Up and over,"
I said to Cassie as we neared the line of Taxans.
"Up and over,"
she yelled back. I leaped. Cassie jumped. Side by side, we sailed over the startled Taxans. They fired their handheld Draken beams, but too late. The beams sizzled the air behind us. and we blew past. I could see Rachel's towering gray bulk just ahead. The stairs were near. I saw Marco with Tom. We were going to make it. And then he stepped out daintily from a group of Hork-Bajir. He seemed almost harmless in his Andalite body. A gentle half-deer, half-human-looking creature, with bluish fur and an extra set of eyes on comical stalks. Visser 3 didn't look all that scary, not compared to the Hork-Bajir, the Taxons, or even our own Earth animals. But Visser 3 had an Andalite body. He had an Andalite's power to morph, and he had been all over the universe, acquiring the genetic patterns of monsters like nothing ever seen on Earth. A Taxon slithered up beside Visser 3 and spoke. It was a weird, half-whistling sound. Visser 3 said nothing. He just looked at me with the vertical slits that were his eyes.
This Taxon fool says you are wild animals,
Visser 3 said.
He wants to know if he and his brothers can eat you.
He laughed silently.
But I know you are not animals. I know who and what you are. So, not all of you Andalites died when I burned your ship.
It took me a couple of seconds to realize what he meant. Then it hit me. Of course! He thought we were Andalites. He'd guessed that we were morphs, not real animals, and he knew that the Andalites were the only species with morphing technology.
I compliment you on getting this far, but it will accomplish nothing, because now, my brave Andalite warriors, it is time. Time to die.
He began to morph.
I acquired this body on the 4th moon of the 2nd planet of a dying star. Like it?
I realized I'd been wrong to be hopeful. We were not going to make it.